April 2012, we had the first Pan-IIT meeting outside of US and India. That was in Singapore. Again, very well promoted by the Singapore government and well attended by our alumni. The most recent one was in December in Kolkata. Next. I mentioned the Distinguished Alumnus Awards. It's a program that our office administers. So far, we have given out 95 awards. This is out of the close to 40,000 alumni. There are 5 categories in which alumni can be nominated: academic, technology innovation, business management, entrepreneurship, and other walks of life, which is a catch-all for anyone who does not fit into these 4. And by the way, people can be nominated in multiple categories also. We have gone to a completely online nomination process from this year. So no more of having to print hard copy documents and mail them and so on. The entire process is online. So again, if you haven't had a chance to do so, do take a look at it, and we'll be happy to get more nominations. Every year we get close to, well, this year we had the maximum number. We had about 90 nominations, and I'd like to grow that number even further. The awards are announced on Republic Day. They are held absolutely secret until then, and then announced on that day. And they are distributed, as I mentioned earlier, on Institute Day. There are several other awards that are instituted by alumni that make a huge difference to the campus. The Young Faculty Recognition Awards were funded by P. Balasubramanian, who is here. Bala. And this year, we instituted Excellence in Teaching Award, and this is funded by Professor Marty Subramaniam. The first recipient is Professor Krishnaya. And then the Alumni Association has also started awarding. There is an award for outstanding service to the Institute. The recipient this year was Professor Ajit Kolar. Outstanding service to alumni, Raj Vardarajan. Is Raj here? Or Professor Kolar? And the Outstanding Young Entrepreneur Award was given to Akshay Jain. Next. Let me talk about our development activities, which is a nice sounding name for fundraising. I think we're doing quite well. In 2011, for the first time, we went above rupees 10 crores. That is close to $2 million for those who like to think in dollar terms, against our historical average of 3 crores a year. And in 2012, we have already done more than 12 crores, and hopefully a few late donations will come in and help us raise that number further. The number of donors finally exceeds 1,000. When you think about it, though, that's still less than 0.3% of our alumni. To me, that's a kind of a reflection more, I think, on how much effort that we have taken to really tap into the alumni base and convince them that it's important to give back to the alma mater. So it's something that we have taken on as a challenge. We want to make our fundraising more broad-based. We want to engage at least 2 to 5% of our alumni in giving short term. And by the way, these numbers are not out of the order that other universities report. I think the less than 1% is very typical of most universities. But still, we are going to try and get that number as high as we can. There are 2 types of fundraising models that are being practiced. One is project-based. Historically, IIT Madras has raised funds towards specific projects. The project gets executed, the funds get deployed, and everyone is happy. The donor is happy, the institute is happy, and our deployment rate is virtually 100%. The only drawback in that model is there is no endowment that's being built up, which will enable the institute to take some actions in a discretionary mode. So now we are trying to also nudge our alumni to considering more of an endowment-based giving. And in fact, the 1985 batch was the first one to make a serious effort at it. They have started something called an Alumni Endowment Fund, which is open to all alumni, not just that batch. And they have seeded it with the funding of about 2 crores, and others have now started contributing into it. As I will see later, our objective is really to grow to an endowment fund of the order of 1,000 crores or $200 million. At that level, we can really start doing some serious good with that kind of money. A campaign that we recently launched in November is called Sponsor a Student. And it's a campaign in which we are trying to get alumni to link up with students kind of on a one-on-one basis, make it a little more personal. Essentially, alumni can choose to fund one student's expenses during 4 years of his or her stay on campus, so that you essentially establish more of a long-term relationship with that student. in addition to just funding. And so full and partial scholarships, that is tuition fee only or tuition fee plus hostel fees, can be paid by an alumnus who will then become that student sponsor. We will link up the two of you, and as you wish, you can maintain communication with that student during the course of his or her stay here. Awards and prizes are always available for funding. Certainly, it's a way of recognizing accomplishments, and there's no limit to it. You know, the more awards we can come up with, we may not be able to give them on Institute Day and Convocation Day anymore, because as it is, they are running very, very long with the increased enrollment of students. But Alumni Day is now the occasion where we have the opportunity to give out more awards and prizes. So I certainly want alumni to think about it, and basically the the funding is at the level of about 1 lakh for 10 years to support or to fund an award to be given on Alumni Day or Institute Day. And finally, international travel support. You know, I mentioned that it's a very serious objective of ours to improve the international character of our campus. What that means is we really have to promote exchanges of faculty and students, going from here to many institutions abroad, and faculty and students coming from overseas institutions to us. Now, this does require some very targeted funding. Now, there are really, again, two types of projects that I want to make a distinction out of. There are projects which are primarily infrastructural in nature, where the institute receives funding from the government to execute those projects and get the infrastructure built. Now, this funding is received from the government, but if alumni choose to fund those projects, then we will essentially give credit for that project, maybe a building, to the alumnus, and the funding that's received from the government for that purpose can now be deployed elsewhere more effectively. But the other type of fundraising opportunities or funding opportunities are like this, which do not receive government funding. The government funding that we get does not address, for example, travel needs that are associated with broadening the scope of our international programs. For example, if you're trying to build a partnership with one university, we want to send a team of students and a team of faculty to have a workshop at that university. Now, to do something like that requires an outlay of, you know, a few lakhs of rupees. And that kind of funding is not being made available by the government. And other opportunities I can think of are many of our students are aspiring entrepreneurs. More and more of them are seriously looking at startups when they graduate. Now, they need a lot of support, not just in terms of seed funding, but also in terms of mentoring, in terms of training, in terms of just building up an ecosystem that will enable them to become successful entrepreneurs when they graduate. Now, these types of efforts today do not receive government support per se, and we are entirely dependent on alumni funding for projects like this. So in your mind, again, I want to make a very clear distinction. There are certain types of projects for which the government funds those projects, and funding that's received from alumni is used somewhat as icing on the cake. But there are many, many other opportunities for which currently no funding is available, and we are absolutely relying on alumni to fill those gaps. And I really want you to give serious consideration, if you are inclined to give back to the alma mater, to consider such opportunities where government funding is just not available. And it is very, very important for us to build up a resource that can enable us to sustain and scale these types of engagements. Next. So this umbrella chart that we put together explains some of these funding opportunities. I believe each of you would have got a card that kind of captures the same thing. There are many, many ways in which individual students can be sponsored. And if I can get a batch of alumni to really pick up one of these initiatives and drive it in a big way, then it can make a very significant difference to student life on campus and eventually to the institute's own capabilities and performance. Next. I mentioned that there are other projects in the infrastructure and sustainability category. These projects range all the way from 20 lakhs up to 12 crores. And these are the types of projects where the work will go on anyway. So for example, the OAT bowl area is being renovated because we want to bring back Gerard Fisher basketball tournament to OAT. Was the basketball tournament in OAT when you guys were here? Yeah, so it's been moved out. It's done in our smaller basketball courts, but now there's a push to bring it back in its full glory to OAT. Now that requires an outlay of about 20 lakhs, which is, the project is already, defined by the institute, but if an alumnus or batch can pick it up as a project, I mean, it's a great opportunity. It's a win-win type of situation. Similarly, the stadium, we need to raise the level of the track area. That requires about 25 lakhs. Now, OAT renovation on a larger scale to improve the stage, the stands, to increase the capacity, to address the green room area, toilets, and so on, that requires about a 2 crore outlay. Swimming pool renovation is in progress. It's about a 5 crore project, and if a batch wants to put their name on a structure, to me the swimming pool would be number one if I were part of the batch. We also have projects related to sustainability. There is a solar photovoltaic based model that's being piloted on 4 buildings: ESB, MSB, BSB, and HSB. The expectation is these buildings will now run almost entirely on solar power, and that requires some funding outlay. Krishna Hostel dining facility, there will be 2 floors with a seating capacity of 375. That requires about 12 crores, can be subdivided by floor. So these are the types of projects, again, which will happen because the institute needs these to happen in order to cater to the students' needs. But if alumni see an opportunity to come in and contribute somewhere, we'll be very happy, because then the government funds, which are given as plan funds, can then be, or block grants, can be used for other purposes. Next. Just a quick schematic on how we are doing on fundraising. As I mentioned, for a long time, we were just doing what I would call opportunistic fundraising. Then we went to what I would call heroic mode, where we had a few alumni step in and give large amounts. And that took us to a spike, but then quickly came back down. For the last few years, we have been really going at it in a very systematic and strategic manner, essentially using a group of alumni volunteers to do a lot of strategizing as well as much of the execution. So I think the growth that we have achieved in the last few years is certainly sustainable. And I think it will get us to the 15 to 20 crore plateau very soon. Whether we can push beyond that, I think is something that we are very seriously contemplating. Next. And similarly, the number of donors, as I said, we just crossed 1,000. So it's certainly something to celebrate, but not for very long, because we still have a long way to go. Next. And batch contributions have certainly been stellar. I mean, if you walk around the campus, you'll see so many things that have been funded by batches. And it is something that I think we should try to continue to promote. And these are just some examples. There's a good mix there of infrastructural projects as well as non-infrastructural projects. And especially you will see that in recent years, the trend has been towards funding of projects other than simple buildings and structures. And that is something that we certainly want to also continue in the future. Next. So you can see the growth in alumni donations by batch. Essentially now we are expecting silver reunions to bring in about 5 crores. But the other reunions, our expectations are not as lofty. And I think we are certainly open to negotiations. And it really has to come from your heart. You have to be convinced that there is a need that needs to be addressed at the institute. And I hope I've done at least a reasonable job of explaining where the needs are. The most pressing needs are where there is no direct funding from the government or from industry or from other sources. And we have many, many, many such needs. And I hope that as I talk to the various reunion batches one-on-one, we can identify opportunities where each batch can contribute and help the students, help the institute, and at the same time feel good about what they're doing. Next. So I'll conclude with this slide. What is the future? Again, we want to look at the alumni relations not as the end, but the means. We want to use alumni as catalysts in so many ways, promoting academic and research collaborations, promoting global industry relations, entrepreneurial initiatives. IIT Madras has now embarked upon many innovation, incubation type of initiatives for which, as Professor Bhaskar mentioned also in the video, we are looking for alumni support in many different ways.